Hello and welcome back. Strange thing, I was thinking over the last couple of days which game to do next, and I have a brand new game coming up, but we'll park that one for a moment. I was looking back at the games I already own, and I thought of these two little babies because, yes, there's been 1001 brilliant videos, unboxings and playthroughs, both of these games, over several years. And each of the games has been out for what, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, that kind of thing. I think Neanderthal was 2015, for instance. So by doing a video, am I already preaching to the converted kind of thing? In other words, anyone who is going to play Neanderthal at all and who is interested in it, do they already have the game and are very familiar with it? That could be the case. I thought of what my channel is doing, and looking back at my videos, the idea is I'm showcasing games I like to play solo and the way I like to play them. This game here, and fairly closely followed by Greenland, but this game here, Neanderthal, is the game I actually play the most. So, because it's my most played game, I didn't want to move on then before I showcased Neanderthal. Neanderthal 2nd edition from, of course, Phil Eklund. Greenland is on its 3rd edition and is also by Phil Eklund, a prolific and brilliant genius-like game designer. And to use that overused terminology once again, they are both huge games in tiny little boxes. Look at that. They're both huge games in tiny little boxes. For instance, Neanderthal. Okay. Neanderthal, tiny box, tons of game inside, from 1 to 3 players. Now in Neanderthal, it describes itself as a game of the origins of culture for 1 to 10 players. Greenland, a survival game for 1 to 4 players. There used to be 1 to 3 players, and in the 3rd edition they've added a possible 4th player. And they both play solo brilliantly. Neanderthal does play solo though much better than does Greenland. You can take your finishing position in Neanderthal and translate it smoothly into your Greenland game, albeit 30,000 years later. So they can join together quite well. We may look at Greenland in a later video for those of you that really would like us to do that. But meanwhile, today, the reason we're here is because Solo Board Gaming presents Neanderthal by Phil Eklund from Sierra Madre Games. Let's have a look. And we're back in the room. Right now here, I've got some of the components, not all, ready for us to investigate on the table here. So first of all, the main part of the game is your board. If you're playing multiplayer, you will choose one of 3 different species of ancestor. So let's take a look at each one. Your first choice might be the Cro-Magnon. Now that's Homo sapiens and represents our direct ancestors. Okay. Next, the name of the game. Neanderthal or Homo neanderthalensis in yellow. And finally we have Archaic Man, represented by Homo Heidelbergensis. Now, apparently, and this game for me has been the ultimate example of this. There is so much history, or rather prehistory in this. So much fascinating detail. You can't help but dig deeper. And over the last 2 or 3 years, that's what I've been doing. Looking into the movements of our ancestors out of Africa and across the rest of the world and so on. Now, Homo heidelbergensis is just one example, for instance, of what the game is calling Archaic Man. For instance, Heidelbergensis has undergone several different name changes over the decades as we learn more and more and more. And Heidelbergensis may be actually several species and so on. Just about all of them died out by the time Cro-Magnon and Neanderthal ancestors met. However, to further the interesting mix in the game, Heidelbergensis has been lumped under the term Archaic Man, so can represent any of those former early species of human. In fact, let's just swap them round slightly. Let's put Archaic Man first. No particular reason, by the way. There we go. Now, very briefly, and only for half a minute, the Neanderthals appeared in Europe about 250,000 years ago. And for the time period, they were the biggest, the strongest, with the highest stamina and the smartest creatures who had ever lived. And their brain, apparently, and we can tell from the hundreds of skulls found, was notably larger than our current brain, the brain of Homo sapiens. And they'd mastered a knapping technique with their stone tools, and they developed those hand axes into multi-component thrusting spears, and also, of course, used throwing spears in the shape of wooden javelins, some of which have been found in Central Europe quite recently. And using those tools and working together, they could bring down a rhinoceros, for instance. They could tame fire, they could build shelters and survive in the harshest corner of Europe. So all that was 250,000 years ago, and with that large brain, within a short time, they should have conquered the entire globe. Shortly after that, as it says in the rule book, they should have been flying Boeing 747s and inventing the microchip. But they didn't. Tens of thousands of years pass, and he's still chasing deer in Europe with his spears and hand axes. Now, that kind of conservatism in a species, I mean, look at all the species on the earth today, is fairly normal, I suppose. They settle down, they find a natural way of behaving and sort of stick to it. But that huge brain. And when we come along, Homo sapiens, Cro-Magnon, about 45,000 years ago, he too had spent the last 100,000 years with a big brain and a Stone Age tool set, but no art, no culture, no improvements. So they were more or less equivalent and more or less capable, but again, as it says in the rule book, they had all the culture and inventiveness of a stone. But somehow, this momentous meeting, and here we are getting to the core of the game now, somehow this momentous meeting produced everything that we now regard as human. And the technology, the hand axe technology that hadn't changed in 1,000,000 years, suddenly exploded in a flurry of cave paintings, body adornments, carved Venus figures, intentional burials, and new portable tools. And the revolution spread from one human species to another. So what had they been doing with all that brain power that had previously not manifested itself in a single new tool or behaviour change that we'd previously detected? The game then, and again I'm referring to the book, suggests that they were perfecting language. And we're going to discuss this to a threshold point that opened portals between brain domains and enabled the language to produce the art, the culture, and the inventions that make us human today. How they did that is exactly what this game is about, and which species is going to come out on top this time, what this game is about. And it's a heck of a journey. Let's take a look at one of these placards in greater detail. Now, all of our species here were big, capable species and followed much of the behaviour of the animal kingdom as we know it. The big, strong males, and we can see this from the bones that we're continually unearthing, mainly went out and did the hunting. The females stayed around the hearth to bring up the next generation. But what this game shows in brilliant detail is how those females were responsible for us becoming the species we are today. It is they that educated the children. It is they that developed most of our language around that campfire. It is they that, through their stories, developed our culture and our art and advanced us as a species. So we start with our player mat. Now we always start on this side of the player mat. This is called the vocal side. We'll have another look in a moment, but the other side is the tribal side. Okay, so you've got vocal and tribal. Only the end game will involve the tribal side, if you ever make your species tribal at all. You can play the whole game, you may have to, just on the vocal side. In other words, a collection of family units rather than a bonded, recognisable tribe with organisation and structure. But that's our automatic goal. That's our eventual goal. But first of all, we have to develop that language that we've been speaking about. So let's look at the now really famous, and it's spoken about a lot, brain map. Okay, each of the brains will have three different domains. The technical domain in black, and let's put these language discs here. As you can see, these language discs are in the same colours, black, orange and white. So the technical domain is in black, and this is our ability to use tools and techniques. Our social domain is orange. These are the orange tokens here. So the social domain is orange, and that's our ability to communicate and have relationships amongst one another, to converse, to discuss ideas, to court and to bond. And then the white discs here, the white area is the nature domain. And that's all the language that we use for the world around us, for the animals that we hunt, for the nuts and berries that we gather, for the grasslands that we move across, for the ice sheets that approach us, for the weather, for the hills and for the sky. Now, these three domains, technical, social and nature, have the potential to communicate with one another. They have the potential to spark together and to join the neural pathways of these different areas of our brain. And that's done through the portals. And these 3 circles are the portals. And we call these portals the Venus, the Shaman, and the Bison portal. And those icons are used throughout the game on the cards and things like that. Now, for instance, with this chap, Neanderthalensis, let me just get a token out, because it is telling me that I start off, see that black circle in the middle there with that arrow on it? It tells me to start the game, I can place a black language token on that Venus portal there. And that is starting to spark communication between my technical domain and my social domain. And slightly asymmetrically, it's different on each species. If I put Heidelbergensis here, take a look at that. Heidelbergensis starts with a vocabulary disc on the bison portal, like so. So we're sparking communication between the technical and the nature domain. And finally, Cro-Magnon. Can we still see that? Is that still in shot? Maybe not quite. Let me just move it up a little bit. Cro-Magnon is starting with an orange disc, which is sparking that communication between the social domain and the nature domain. I'll take those off again for a second. So, what else do we have on our placard? We have elders. We have elders number 3, 4, 5, and 6. Elders 1 and 2, which are our chief and shaman, are not available on the purely vocal placard. We have to turn it over and become tribal before we can nominate a chieftain and a shaman. Do you get it? That makes sense. So, for most of the game, we are trying to develop elders 3, 4, 5, and 6. And these are the guys, well, it's exactly what it suggests. These are the elders of our family groups. These are the people with the knowledge. Now, first of all, we will all start with a fire starter down here. He's our very first elder. So we will all start with a fire starter. So I'm going to take one of our unassigned hunters out of the bag, and I want to make him a fire starter. So I'm going to place him on there, but I can't do that immediately. We don't want you to do that. First of all, see that black circle underneath him? That one has an orange circle. That one has a black circle. That one has a white circle. I'm going to have to place that underneath him, that language disc there, and then place my fire starter. Now, at the moment, that language disc suggests that he is immature. He's still learning. He's the first of our elders who's up and coming, who's gaining the knowledge. Now, eventually, he'll learn the skills as a fire starter to prevent frostbite on our hunts. Or here, to enable cost-free elder promotions. In other words, we could put a 3, a 4, a 5, when applicable, down here without them being immature, if we have a mature fire starter. Or during the chaos round, and we'll explain this again, he can help prevent elder loss, our older people dying off during chaos. But he can't have any of those skills yet until he's mature. So to make him mature, we have to find a way of getting rid of that language disc, because at the moment, that language disc signifies the language, the communication required for him to gain the knowledge to become a fire starter. Okay? So anything with a disc underneath it is immature. So that's how we're going to start the game if we are Homo neanderthalensis. How do we get the other elders? Okay. Let's, for instance, have a look at the napper. And what the napper would give us, it would give us an advantage when hunting, and there's another icon there, that large tipped spear, that large stone-headed spear. He's the napper. He is making the best of our tools. If only we could gain the knowledge, the language to achieve this napping knowledge. So how do we do that? It shows you there. We require a black, an orange and a white language disc. So to become a napper, you need technical, social and nature knowledge, language. And this line here is pointing to this black technical portal because we need 3 colours and at the moment we've only got 1. How do we get the other 2? Well, we have to find ways of getting the orange disc and the white disc. Now, for instance, the black portion of the brain, if you go around here, look, it also adjoins the white area. So, with a white disc in the white area, because that's what it would need to be, we now have a black and a white in the technical area. And finally, because the black area and the orange area overlap in this portal, there, look, see? Black and orange. We would need an orange disc there. We now have the criteria to create a napper. We have joined the technical black area, the white nature area and the orange social domain to get the 3 discs. So now we would have a napper. And we would place our chap with a black disc beneath him to signify he's immature because he's still learning, and place him like that. Unless we already had a mature fire starter elder and he has helped in his development. So in that case, he would instead go on there as already being mature. And our warrior, we do it in the same way, but now it's pointing to the social domain, look. He needs black, orange and white. Now there's only one place for the orange to go, and that's there. Oh, sorry. I better complete it by just putting a white disc there. Okay. Now, if we were playing multiplayer, by the time we've got 5 discs on there, and it reminds us down here, 3 players, you need 5 portals filled to be able to flip to become tribal. If you're playing solitaire or 2 players, you need 6 portals filled. So we would need 1 more disc on there somewhere. And then we could flip the card, if we ever even get to that stage. And finally, of course, on your placard, you have very usefully in the corner here the turn phases, phase 1 to phase 6. So we know what we need to do to develop our brains, to make those connections, to get the right language and connections in place, to develop our elders so that hopefully we can become tribal. But hang on. How do we make these connections between the brain domains? How do we develop the language to do so? Well, that's through our women. That's through courtship. That's through our daughters. So let's look at daughters next. Alrighty, so here we go. So our daughter cards are here. Now look, there's 21 of these in the game, but we start each game with just 10 cards from a shuffled deck. So each game is scheduled to have 10 turns, but there may be reasons why we add to that card pile during the game to make the game slightly longer. Anyway, we have 10 daughter cards, and at the start of each turn, we take a daughter card and we turn it over. Now, hang on a second. These cards are dual purpose. The top of the card, first of all, is an event. So first of all, we have to look at the events. They give us a turn order like here, and each card is different. So randomly, we get a turn order. Yellow will go first, followed by red, followed by green, and so on. And the icons across the top tell us what events, and there's quite a few in this particular card, what events will happen during this turn. Okay, and if we need to remind ourselves what those brilliant icons mean, and this is all icon driven, which I love, we go to our Rosetta Stone. Now, the Rosetta Stone is our player aid, and it tells us exactly what every single icon in the game means. Absolutely easy peasy. Okay, for each phase. Then it also, by the way, gives us a glossary of the terminology, the tribesmen's roles and that kind of thing. And even now then, and I know people do study this, statistics table, the chances of certain results from dice rolls throughout the game. So before you decide to roll dice or assign people to a hunt or that kind of thing, you could consult the table, and it tells you what the percentage chance is of rolling any particular results. That's very interesting there. Okay, so that's the Rosetta Stone. Anyway, back to the event card. So I'm not going to go through all these events in detail now. We'll do that during our play demonstration in the next video. But this one, for instance, means global warming. So there'll be some global warming taking place in our game. This will be a chaos event. There's some chaos going on, and chaos can mean anything. Now here, it's an ultra bright meteor falling from the sky. Or really, it could be any kind of event that's caused chaos within our family groups. Do we have the language? Do we have the words? Do we have the organization to help us survive that chaos, or have we got too big? That can be a very bad event. Then we have blizzard. We have a blizzard events. Are we going to lose some of our dependents? Then we have elder die-off, and all this is happening in one turn. Are any of our elders going to die, for instance, during the period that we're talking about here? And we're talking 50,000 to 30,000 years ago, that kind of thing. During this period, it's thought that the life expectancy of a Neanderthal, and this is from bones that have been found and that kind of thing, is around 30 years. Now, older remains have been found of potentially 40 to 50 years old. That would be really, really extreme. And a 40-year-old is a very old person indeed. So that's elder die-off. And then we have wanderlust. Are any members of our family group going to go wandering off and join another rival family group? We know that interbreeding happened. We know that nowadays we all have around approximately 2%, for instance, of Neanderthal DNA in our makeup. So we know that interbreeding went on. So those are the events. Anyway, so we come back now to our females, the daughters, because we were trying to discover how we build these connections between our domains in our brain. So let's turn the card over. So we've done all the events, and we hope we survived those. And then we turn over and it becomes a daughter card. And this daughter is called the Weather Whisperer. Now, why is she the Weather Whisperer? There's some information here. Specialized weather forecasters would have been invaluable for determining food and kindling provisions for migrations and overwintering. And there's a beautiful illustration there. Look at that. Of ember carriers. Now, because when we talk about peoples this long ago of using fire, are we saying that they're using fire, or are we saying that they are making fire? And there is a difference, because Neanderthals or Heidelbergensis would have been using fire before they learned, or long way before they learned, to make fire. In other words, naturally occurring fires, from lightning strikes, forest fires, and that kind of thing. And eventually they would have learned to carry embers from one place to another. Ashes, hot ashes, and that kind of thing. Anyway, so this daughter is called the Weather Whisperer. And if we want to bid for her, in a 3-player game or a 2-player game, you're trying to outbid one another, and we have to bid white nature domain tokens on this particular daughter. Now, for instance, on this daughter, let's have a look. Who's this? This daughter is called Vigilant Woman. And Vigilant Woman, look, completely different profile. Wonderful design on these cards. The first elements of speech and grammar were intentional calls modified on the basis of intensity. A danger call, for instance, for an imminent lion would be exclaimed with more intensity than a distant one. Ah, I see. Okay. Watch out over there. Or, watch out! It's behind you! Anyway, okay. So that makes sense. Thus, the invention of adjectives likely preceded nouns. I get it. Okay. So this is called Vigilant Woman. And for Vigilant Woman, we have to bid black discs, technical domain. Okay. So we try to outbid one another, or if you're playing the solo game, and the way I do it, to show that some kind of outbidding went on, I would say, okay, I want, Weather Whisperer, and there's my one bid there, and in fact, I'll make it 2, as if I just outbid an opponent. Okay, and that makes absolute sense. So let's just put that to one side. So I've won Weather Whisperer, but Weather Whisperer is immature because she's got 2 discs on her. Remember what we said about Firestarter over here? There's Firestarter. Let's plonk him back. There's green ones there for Archaic Man. Okay. To put Weather Whisperer into our tableau and for her to be of any use to us, she has to become mature. At the moment, she's a daughter of ours, but she has to become mature. So I have to find a way of removing not 1, but 2 white discs. And that could take 2 or 3 turns or more. Yeah. But once she is matured, look what she gives us. First of all, because she teaches us her skills, our ember carrier, there's her ember carriers. Yeah. And she can carry those hot ashes from one place to another. Our rank 6 elder, in other words, our Firestarter, becomes immune to elder die-off. Oh, that is powerful. You would want Weather Whisperer on your side. And importantly, we can place, there it is, when she's mature, she's giving us language, she's giving us knowledge. And time round the campfire and with the children produces language with which we can make those connections via the portals between our brain domains. So she enables us to put a black token in the bison area. See, there's a picture of a bison on it, and that's there, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. So now we've got 2 connections. We've got black and white in that area. Does that mean we're on our way to gaining the knowledge to make a trapper? Now, for instance, Vigilant Woman, once she is mature, would enable us to put a white language disc in the bison area. And to show you that there are many different areas. Look at this. How wonderful is this? Let's look at Grieving Woman. Grieving Woman. These flowers may have been the first grave goods, and now from the Shanidar cave around 40,000 years ago. Early man left his dead where they dropped, but the Cultural Revolution heralded the first deliberate burials with grave goods. The dead were fed and outfitted as if still alive and still giving forth their commands. This is Grieving Woman. She will teach us how to do this. And once she is mature, she will enable us to place an orange and a white disc in the, and look at the icon on it, the shaman area of our brain, orange and white. So that is how we're gaining the knowledge, the inspiration, the ideas to form those connections between the domains of our brain. It's from our daughters who are telling the stories to teach and develop our offspring so that our species can evolve further. So hang on, guys. So let's say I've successfully bid for these two daughters over the last few turns. That one I had to bid, it's orange and white, look. Okay, so there's my bid there. That one I had to bid black. We know that our daughters have to mature before their skills can help develop our family group. And I keep talking about us getting rid of these immaturity discs. But how do we do that? We do that by going hunting. Now, our biomes, the area in which we live, the area across which we hunt, is divided into South Row and North Row. Okay? And there's 18 cards in each deck. And to create our biomes, I won't do it now, I'll do it in a second, but we would lay out 6 cards for our Northern Row, and we would lay out 6 cards for our Southern Row. Okay? But before we do that, let's just look at the detail while we're up close on a couple of the cards. Chamois, where we get our chamois leathers from, or chamois. First of all, once again, like all of these cards, it has beautiful artwork on it. And it shows us, can you see that sort of silhouette in the background there, that pale blue silhouette? How large this animal is compared to a typically sized person. And we've got that lovely illustration there of the chamois. Now, this green bit here, they don't all have that on them, shows us that it's also a foraging area. So we can forage there for mushrooms. And if we were a foraging species, I'll explain that later as well, because they're not all foraging species, we could put one of our little hunters on there during the hunting phase to, instead of hunting, to do some foraging. Okay, so that's foraging, that basket there. Otherwise, as long as we have the right kind of language, and the precondition here is orange and white, as long as we have the required amount of language in our pool, we only need to roll, shows 1 dice there, and that star shows us that we need to, the result needs to be a 1 or a 2. So, okay, we could put just one hunter on it. Okay. We would only get to roll 1 dice, but we need to roll a 1 or a 2. And there you go. I've just rolled a 3. So that's a failed hunt. Nothing happens to the hunter. After the hunt phase, he'll come back home. But it's a failed hunt. So instead, I might have put, I don't know, what's the chances? Okay, let's say I've put 3 hunters out there. And now we're going to roll 3 dice. 4, 1, 1. Ah, there you go. I've actually got 2 ones. Now, if I'd have got 2s, if one of them was a 2, that's equally successful. because that isn't a number 1 on that little die icon there. It's a star, and the star means 1s and 2s are successful. So that's a successful hunt. So my 3 guys would come home unharmed. We would gain 2 babies, because that's what round the campfire this kill, this food has led to. We would get 2 babies, and see that orange disc? We can remove anywhere on our tableau an orange disc. So we would, for instance, we might want to remove that orange disc there. So Grieving Woman is now halfway to becoming mature. That's how we free up our immaturity discs by successful hunts. Let's look at another one. North row. What have we got here? Oh, an Arctic flounder. Okay. And again, we can forage. Now look, that's a coincidence. There's more foraging there. That's for mussels. Now fishing is a bit more difficult. So notice that that is black, that dye there, and it's a solid dot. It's not a star. That means that has to be a 1. That has to be 1 or 2. That has to be a 1. So how many people are we going to send fishing? The Wisent. We have to get 3 1s or 2s to successfully hunt that. 3 1s or 2s. But if we're successful, we would get 4 babies, and we could free a black disc and a white disc. Wow. I would be freeing those there, look. A black disc and a white disc. I've now got 2 mature daughters, and my family group grows by 4 babies. Let's just set out the hunting biome to show you what it would look like when it's set up. Here we are. We've set up our hunting biomes, our hunting and gathering biomes. We have the north row and we have the south row. At various times during the game, we could have global warming, which will mean some maybe very desirable fauna here would end up migrating northwards because the earth is warming up, or more likely we'll have global cooling where much of the top may eventually become an ice sheet and will become impossible to hunt, and we would have less and less biomes in which to hunt, and conflict between our species can then occur as we're fighting over reducing resources. Now, don't forget, when we are allocating our hunters, and we all start off with the same amount of hunters, when we're allocating our hunters to various cards, and we could put them all on one card, or we could split them between 2 or 3 cards, depending on what the rewards are. Hunting the sturgeon in the north, look, would gain us 3 babies, and we could remove 2 orange discs. At the moment, we have a black to remove. We have 2 whites to remove, so that our daughter here, which is the weather whisperer, can mature, and we can use her knowledge to add to our communication abilities between our brain domains. But we would know in this first turn, for instance, that really, ideally, we're looking for white rewards or a black reward to help mature either our fire starter or our daughter. This one here, the European cave lion. Very difficult to hunt, as you can imagine. He's huge. Those 3 die there are black, and they have a single white dot on them. So we have to get 3 1s. Unlike this icon here, where we just have to get a single 1 or a 2, and so on. So it just shows how difficult the European cave lion, a predator, is to hunt. Plus, we might get frostbite if we don't have a mature fire starter. So each 6 we roll could kill one of our hunters, or It shows 3 bloodied dice here. We could actually lose hunters during the hunt because that European cave lion is so ferocious, and so on. We have a steppe bison, we have a carcass, caribou, woolly rhinoceros, European ass, wild boar, red deer, a flint mine. Now look, we could remove a single black. Let's keep it simple. Let's hedge our bets. Let's put 3 on there. Let's roll 3 die. Oh, what we got? A 2, a 3 and a 3. What did we need? We needed a single, 1 or a 2. Successful. So our hunters would come home. We don't get any babies because this is flint mines we're working in. We're looking for fresh deposits of flint. But it does help us with our technical domain. There you go, black. That's technical language. So we could remove the black immaturity disc from our fire starter. That is now a mature fire starter. Any more detail and I would end up playing the game. So I'm not going to give any more detail there. We'll just go on to another aspect of the game. Now, when we start the game proper, each species also has to choose a sexuality. Yeah, there you go, I've said it. We have to we have to choose a sexuality. This is fascinating. And there are 3 different potential sexualities you can choose. One behavior is harem holding, where one male holds domain over several females, and the harem holding species has these end of game scoring abilities. And we start with putting 1 language disc there in white, 1 in orange and 1 in black. That's harem holding. Promiscuous, otherwise known as the selfish gene, you will start with the gathering ability. Remember I mentioned that some cards have a gathering biome on them? Now this is where everybody helps in the hunting or the gathering. This is a big decision here, because you have to keep, if you are promiscuous, 2 white, 2 orange and 2 black language discs on there that you can't use for anything else. Because if we're all out hunting and gathering, because of our promiscuity, we're not spending so much time, there's not so much male parental involvement in bringing up the children, developing our future gene pool. We'll show how these play out when we do the play demo. And finally, there's pair bonding, which is similar to what many societies, not all, but many societies are today, where there's a lot more male parental involvement. So in the pair bonding, where we're protecting our investment, none of our language is pinned to that card. We have a lot more language with which to tell stories and develop our gene pool, if you like, around that campfire. One drawback of that, it takes a bit longer for us to be able to use our daughter's language abilities, because in pair bonding, not only do our daughters have to become mature, but they also have to marry first. In other words, pair bond before she can add her knowledge to our species. So, for instance, if we were pair bonding, there's the card there, you would put it next to your placard. If we were a pair bonding species, we'd first have to make that daughter mature. Once she's mature, we then have to put an orange disc on her like that, and a potential husband, someone courting her like that. And once our husband is mature, by hunting for an orange disc, then we can use her knowledge. So these are asymmetrical, more further ways that each species is slightly asymmetrical one to another. Finally, there is also a board we can use. There's a board available, doesn't come with the game, but it merely is a board upon which you can put your hunting biomes. Makes no difference to the game whatsoever. You absolutely don't need it. I do have it, so I'm now going to set up a play demo for the next video. So you'll see the board there. Meanwhile, I hope this introduction has been useful. I'm looking forward to the game because, as I say, it's my most played, yeah, that's right, most played game over the past 3 or 4 years. It's a game I do play a handful of times each year, both solo and multiplayer. And it's quite easy to teach. So now we've seen all the components, we'll see how they work together, although we've seen some of that, and we'll look at the phases of the game in our playthrough demo in our next video. Hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Please tune in next time. Bye bye.